and found the documentation that
Now,
at one point
Yeah,
it was
this
given
was-
to the city and then the city
That
deeded
camera
it to
is
the
not-
owners.
connected for some reason.
Okay.
And so I think it's kind of all getting
Oh,
itself worked out with the county and pulling records, and
And who,
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Marcella and Dave went down there and kind of went through it.
yeah, Marcella had talked to me about it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, first we have to decide
Yeah.
where the city limits are.
That's what I
Yeah.
selected before.
I mean,
But then it gets into, can you really have a piece of property that's half in the, part of the
cannot.
city, part of the county?
I asked Great West,
There you go.
and they
And be brought into that other 37 acres of land.
I think
So
it's
now it
actually
should
the-
all be in the county, so it should be a map amendment to get it, any of it out of the city limits, and line up with the rest of 212 that's already done that.
so the zoning has to make sure that it's not included in the city limits,
So we're being recorded, guys, just so
Okay.
you know. We're not-
and the URD as well.
We're
Yep.
just trying to figure out why this is not on.
Good.
It sounded like they figured a bunch out today.
Good. Yeah, she had called me earlier today, and it was like,
That's connected back there.
well, the zoning map isn't always perfect.
What are we doing wrong,
So-
Brian?
See?
We've
And
got
it
it all
had a
here,
big
but it's
chunk
not
in it,
on there.
so I had asked Great West whether or not you could have a land, one piece of land that's half in the city and half in the county. And he goes, no, you can't. I said, well, I think we do.
I mean, so the camera's working, it's being
Yeah,
on here.
good.
and
We're
it's
trying
just-
to-
Yeah, we're trying to connect this to that.
Yeah. So,
Well, you know what? I think I know what's up. Hold on. I figured it out again.
okay.
Let's go. Oh, never mind.
There, oh, there, whoop, there you go.
Okay.
So now you can just make the screen bigger.
Boom.
Woo, there we go.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Thank you, Brian.
Now, I can really pull up my computer now. All right. Hang tight, y'all.
And it is recording, right, Chelsea?
Correct.
Okay. I know the audio was on and stuff.
Double
I
check.
just don't say anything inappropriate from this moment on.
Okay.
From 5 minutes ago.
Well, you'll have to-
Okay. Hello.
Mr. Mayor.
Nope.
No. Can we rearrange those desks? So, because they were.
We did all
like,
sorts
or-
of fun work.
Pardon?
We did all sorts of fun work.
Did you just do that just now?
Yeah.
I figured we'd be doing that between meetings, but
Well, we had a little bit of time and now we don't. Now we're past that. Okay. Hold tight, kids. So I pull this up.
1, 2, oh, I know where a third is.
Okay. Alrighty. So, started off reviewing the minutes from September 24th. Sandy had those to us basically within 24 hours.
While I still remembered everything that went on, as
Yep.
my notes, and I can augment it. Were those okay?
It all seemed dandy,
I
so.
vote yes, too.
Okay, well, I didn't say I voted yes, but yeah. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move.
Second, okay. Resolution number 3660, event applications. It will be up for action tonight. We had to make one small change. Brian got that done before our last meeting, but we still decided to push it to this meeting, so that way people had the opportunity to review. Essentially, there is going to be a checkbox that says if it is a recurring event. That way, priority can be given as needed and as deemed fit by the city. And also to know whenever there is a recurring event.
Do we need to say yearly recruiting, or reoccurring, or just reoccurring?
I think reoccurring, because they do have a date, I think it's just a checkbox.
I think it gave them the option to pick a date for the following year.
Okay,
So
so that there's like recurring events? and-
They can kind of give a preference for 1 year out.
Yeah,
do we, do we change the ordinance so that that can happen? Because right now, don't we limit it by ordinance to, it has to be within a year before they can ask?
Well, this is just
a soft,
a soft opening to.
This is more for reference.
You still have to submit an application,
Yep.
but this is a reference that, hey, we have this one coming up.
So it kind of reserves the spot?
Yeah, just
It's
puts it
not
on the
guaranteed,
city's
yeah.
radar, so we're not booking
it's not on the calendar as a solid, just as a likely.
a TBD.
Because the other thing that is concern is, one of the things we're getting away from is they're no longer able to say, same as last year, same as last year, same as last year. And that recurring event almost seems like a gateway to say,
They-
same as
no.
last year.
It's not making it so they don't have to put in an application. It's just a heads up, we wanna do this again next year.
Yep.
So,
This is the
rodeo.
preference date or hours of event for the following year.
Yes.
Yep.
So the rodeo, the fun run,
The car
There's-
show.
there's a lot of them
Renaissance
that are
Festival.
big recurring events that,
Yeah, the rally. So that someone else doesn't come in, like, and say the 4th of July, we're gonna have a big wedding up there, so we want all of the city, we want to use up by the rodeo grounds for our big wedding reception and camping over the 4th of July. So somebody else can't come in and submit an application first and take over a big event, a big established event that's already happening.
So is the intent for this, let me restate what I think I heard. The intent is to give reoccurring events a head up for the reservation for the following year,
Correct.
comma, however, this is not binding in any way, shape, or form. They still have to, what happens if it's 3 weeks before and they haven't filled out their event yet? At what point does this preference date expire?
Well, I think if it's 3 weeks before the car show, or before, yeah, I mean, I would think,
So I think that it doesn't necessarily hold that event, it just, or that timeline, it says, we have someone who has a reoccurring event, let me touch base with them, confirm with them, and get their application solidified. And let them know, we have someone else who's doing this, if you don't submit this.
right, we don't have that many recurring events. You know,
And it-
we're
and it-
pretty,
puts it on the event people to kind of give another day for the following year and then get their application in without the city trying to determine what is recurring, we know the 4th of July rodeo is gonna happen every year. So we can't really just block it out for them, they still have to give an application, but with this, hey, look, last year they said that they're gonna have it again, here's the dates that they marked down, okay, we don't have it, something wrong, something's going on, why don't we have your application?
right. I just, I guess it is, I mean, it's a way for them to reserve the date, I guess, so that the city knows that, yes, it is supposed to happen, we don't have the application yet.
And I would consider it more of a hold than like a reserve, you know?
Yeah.
Like, again, it is.
Yeah, you're holding the date for them.
Yep, and at that point, the city uses their best judgment when it's 6 months out and now you get a request for another event to happen in Lions Park during the fun run time. Like, hey, we need this application from you. I think it's at the city's diligence to decide, and that's how it's written in our ordinance, and it's how it's written in the application, that the city has the right to reserve, or reserves the right to essentially apply or get those applications in and approve those applications.
Basically, you can put a tentative schedule on the calendar.
Yeah.
Tentative, this is a tentative date for this deal that happens every year. They still have to get all their application in and all the explanations that go with it. Doesn't get them out of that, but it's a way to put a mark on the calendar, so when the next year comes, if something comes in,
Right.
we know it's.
It's a non-confirmed hold, that's what it is. And, I mean, same way that if someone were to try and book a wedding venue, they would put a hold on for those dates. If someone else came and inquired, now you bring it back to the original person that has the hold, like, are you doing this or not?
Yeah.
And we ran into it this year with the wedding and the fun run. We had a wedding get planned before the fun run had their application. So then it was a juggling act, where the wedding's in the afternoon, fun runs in the morning. Okay? The wedding knows that we're gonna have this big reoccurring event every year, and the fun run's gonna make sure everything's cleaned up in that area, so the wedding can happen.
Okay. And I don't see a small event, because there's not a form for small event,
No, there's no reoccurring small event.
or is that just, not to that page yet? Then my other question that I had is on the resolution itself. So there isn't a form for a small one?
No, small event's not, I don't foresee a small event being a reoccurring event.
No, I don't have a form at all. Like, if I'm applying for
The
a small
application.
land use, it's not in the packet.
Because, well, we didn't make a change to that one,
But that one has never been adopted either.
so.
Can we include that as?
Yeah, it was in last week's packet, it was,
That'll be,
Yeah, it's been in several packets, I feel like.
yeah, I know it was in last week's packet. I didn't, that's the one I gave to Lonnie, because that was the one that had the changes on it.
because this has actually, small event use of city-owned land is Exhibit A, and large event Exhibit B as presented, and we just don't have it. So that,
So it didn't get put in the
Okay.
packet for this week.
But it
okay,
wasn't last week.
It was in last week's packet.
okay, so, yeah, okay. Then the second question I have is, under the be it resolved, it just says the city of Red Lodge reserves the right to approve or deny an application. Based on what? I stare at the corner and I look at the sky and I say, this feels like a yes.
Yeah, you got it,
Based on the application.
based on the information in the application.
Hold, please.
Well, I understand what you're saying, because if you,
Well,
you have to treat all events equally. So if they have satisfied all of the concerns of the department heads, then, you know, it should be an approval.
I believe in the ordinance
Right.
that we just presented, though, didn't we have, isn't there that criteria in there for what the city may or may not approve or deny on?
Then, so, as I'm looking at the ordinance isn't, but does it say based on compliance with the ordinance? So, and I guess I'll look to council for input on that, but that looks like a sludgy statement that creates,
Controversy.
well, I
It's
have
too
the right,
vague.
I have the right to deny your application. No bike rally this year.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the noise.
But
No, I see what he's saying.
I do too, yeah, because we don't want it to be subjective. There has to be a reason to deny it. You couldn't, you know, if you fill out the application and the department heads all sign off on it, they say, yeah, I don't have a problem with it, I don't have a problem with it, it should be an automatic, okay, it's done.
So my question is, if we have the ordinance that sets all of that, do we just strike that completely from this resolution? Does it not
Does
need
the
to be?
ordinance say that?
Does the
I'm
ordinance,
pulling it up right now.
I don't know if the ordinance really says that or not.
I feel like it's pretty detailed, and I feel like there were criteria, but there is a statement in there that says the city has the right to either approve or deny, and it does provide criteria, but I don't think it's based around that criteria. It's that they're, give me the word, someone's got it.
Discussion?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there should be.
subjective discretion sounds like a lawsuit. Or somebody, our system works because we don't allow any single individual to abuse power. And it's council's job to put, I remember back into the days when Peter Talian was here. Don't just say it's up to staff's discretion, tell us what the rules are and we will apply them.
Yeah.
Well, if you give me a completed application that meets all the criteria, it's gonna be approved.
Okay.
If you give me an application that has not been filled out, or same as last year, then it's, well, until I have all the information, I can't approve this.
And you're looking to see if that's in, because to me, I'd say
Okay.
then that gets rid of that from the therefore in the resolution. Council, what's your input?
I don't think it should be that big of an issue, and what I mean by that is, there is an idea that the city does reserve the right to deny an application. Generally, though, the reason for denial of application would be based upon the application itself. There should be a reason in there. Just because it's filled out doesn't mean that it should automatically be approved.
Yeah.
Specifically, just because it's filled out, the city can say, you know, this is the reason, there should be a reason for denial. So,
It's noisy and it disrupts our lives.
what?
It's noisy and it disrupts our lives. My neighbors don't like it.
That's not,
If there's a actual public health and welfare reason, then yeah, the city can deny it, so.
Okay, the authority shall deny an application for a permit or revoke a permit if the authority finds any of the following. The applicant has knowingly made a false, misleading, fraudulent statement to the facts of the city. The application does not contain the information required by this ordinance. The application does not satisfy the requirements of this ordinance. The applicant has damaged city property and has not paid in full for such damage, or has other outstanding and unpaid debts related to prior permit issued by the city. The applicant has failed to meet conditions and operate within the parameters of previous permit granted by the city, including payments and fees. The city shall approve the applicant shall provide the applicant a written explanation for any denial of a permit. If the application is denied, the applicant may appeal to the city council.
Okay, and that's ordinance what?
That is ordinance 960.
I would say based on ordinance 960, this doesn't need to be in the resolution at all.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be. I mean,
And again, that's council's job, not mine. I'm just offering
and
you
you
my
could add
input.
language if you wanted, where the city reserves the right to approve or deny an application based on the application, information contained in the application, and also the laws and ordinances. You could add that too if you wanted.
But there's no need to. It's easier to take it out than to
Take it out.
make it
Yep.
proposed.
Good either way.
And again, there's another bit here. In deciding whether to approve an application permit, no consideration will be given to the message of the event or activity, the content of speech, the identity or associational relationships of the applicant, or to any assumptions or predictions as to the amount of hostility which may be aroused in the public by
Does
the.
it say roused or aroused? Just out of
It
curiosity.
says aroused.
Yeah, it should be roused, but that's okay.
In the public by the content of speech or message conveyed by the event or activity.
And by the way, does that say which section of code it updates? Does that existing code?
Let's see. Title 8, Chapter 8.
Eight, okay.
8.
Then the other thing that I saw in here, park facility fees shall be earmarked for parks project improvements.
I feel like we took that out.
Pardon?
Thought we had taken that out.
It's still in this, the version I have, pardon?
It's still there.
Yeah.
Oh, is that true?
Sounds like a bookkeeping nightmare to me. It says, park facility fees shall be earmarked for parks projects improvements.
You can take it out. I think, I don't remember if we put that in because, you're reserving like the gazebo, you're reserving, part of Finn Park, you're reserving, and it was to add money to the park budget, but the parks budget is pretty well funded with some start tax, so I would say just take it out, in my personal opinion. I think our general fund probably needs it more than our parks budget does. That's just my personal opinion.
Perfect, thank you.
So those are the two things that I have on that one. I'm not voting. You guys are.
Oh, 36, I thought we were on 9, okay.
No,
I'm in it, I'm on it.
I was just checking.
Any other conversation around 3630 or 60?
Yeah.
No,
Done. Okay.
we're good. I think
So
we've looked at it, I've looked at it till I'm blue in the face, I think.
Great.
Sorry.
Okay, so moving on.
Who's going to, if it is, who's gonna make the motions or bring up for discussion the possible amendments?
I will.
And as far as the park facility fees, are we doing that now? Probably not, are we? We're not.
I don't think they're going into a special accounts department.
I think it'd be pretty hard to.
I said it's a nightmare. that-
Accounting nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, let's not talk about accounting right now.
I bet they're trying to look at that.
I'm gonna have to watch.
What?
Not true, sorry, I've been.
How's it going on there?
All right, I'm gonna make myself a little note. Bear with me.
We'll go to 9/11.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Okay. Much for a light meeting. Oh. Okay, onward. So ordinance number 911, second amended, camping on city-owned land, second reading. We have had our first reading. Second reading, I feel like we didn't have any changes last week at council. Feel pretty good about moving forward. Dennison has looked it over. He says it's amazing.
I've ever seen in my life.
Better still.
See? I will say there has been some public commentary around it where some folks do want to see public camping in the right-of-ways. Some folks are wondering who's enforcing this, even though it clearly says that within the ordinance. I think as of now, it was discussed and we said we are not comfortable at this time moving forward with having public camping in the public right-of-way.
Correct. That's right, yes.
If we
I
were to
had
do
that
that, we could open that can of worms, but for now, we just wanted to clean this up and make sure it is accurate
It's
and,
accurate and easy to follow.
yeah, exactly, and remove things that didn't matter
That had no-
anyway.
I would
Yeah.
like to camp in my backyard.
I will add, as I drove across the state and went through towns and
Mm-hmm.
and actually have been on a couple of trips since then, that, one of the things I saw is I went to other cities, and they had it, or they had things available, or it was private. It was like, I think that the short takeaway is, not every problem is the cities to solve and address. Well, what about the people who, do they need someplace to park? And I think it was suggested in this last time, that there's the option of, you know, looking at our zoning and saying people have the ability to set up an RV park within city limits, or.
Yep.
But I think when I was listening to it before and I was going, the moment I had later, when it wasn't in the middle of the tugging at the heartstrings, was, yeah, but that's not the city's problem to, and because I was kind of looking and I went, council got this right. So, yeah,
It's an opportunity for someone in the city to potentially make some money.
Absolutely.
just because there's something that's not being addressed doesn't mean the city needs to open a new line of business.
Agreed.
We do water, we do sewer, we do trash, we do police, we do fire.
We are not,
No, I do think
Yeah.
our
Or should we
zoning
be?
should be
No.
such that we do allow RV parks within the city limits. So someone, you know, meeting those guidelines will be able to do that.
And I believe it does. So,
It doesn't right now, I don't
No.
believe.
Really?
It does not.
I don't think that we have RV parks zoned in the city specifically.
oh, interesting. I feel like I
Yeah,
looked into
there's
this
some real
recently,
fuzzy things
but,
along that line too.
Yeah, so it'd be nice
So-
to have that.
yeah, I would love to see that.
next, on public
Park.
Okay. So pasture lease discussion. Sir.
I'm going back and looking at our title, because I know it started this all with the title. So an ordinance to amend, clarify, and revise the Red Lodge overnight parking and use of city-owned lands, including dedicated parks and right-of-way for overnight camping. And we do that because we say if it's tied to an event.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Title 4, Chapter 1, Section of, okay, this is beautiful. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
See, I told you.
I mean,
Should we frame it?
We should.
Oh,
We should do better
beautiful.
than that. We should codify it.
We,
Pasture lease discussion.
Okay.
So we had a lease presented to us several weeks ago. And
We have the lease.
status update on that, has it been marketed, like?
We have not sent out the RFP on it yet. I wanted to look a set of eyes on it. We had also reached out to the folks and basically kind of wanted to give them a heads up on just what was coming, but I feel, the first version that we had ended up getting modified significantly,
Yep.
and I haven't looked at that new modification.
Okay.
But we should do that we should put it in the paper next week, we should be able to do that.
Okay.
Okay, next week, publication.
And will we plan to have that revised lease for us to review?
So, yeah, before we sign it, it'll have to come to council to authorize the mayor to sign it, but before that happens, we're gonna do an RFP and we'll have an RFP selected.
Okay,
So that, the signing part is still
down the road.
down the road
Okay.
several weeks, I would anticipate.
I just feel like a lot of those terms that would be within the lease, wouldn't that be going into the RFP for advertisement?
That's the reason that I need to sit down and review it before the RFP goes out.
Okay.
Okay.
Wasn't it the problem with that they're currently only leasing part of a legal description? Not
Well-
the entire legal description?
Well, I think
Remember that.
the original lease had several issues in that it didn't have a legal
Any-
description.
There was,
Yeah.
and then it
I
was
know
a
that.
funky, yeah.
And then there was also a bunch of presumed limitations that it turns out are not as limiting as they were understood to be.
As we,
However, it needs to be evident in the RFP. So the short version is, and I've got two staff members here that correct me if I'm wrong. The short version is, the assumption was that it can't be used because it has in the past been used for sewer. That proviso expires in like 3-4 years, some relatively short term, a lot shorter than we thought it was.
Okay.
And so while it is not actually restricting to what the use is currently, the lease needs to state, this could be used tomorrow for this purpose in the future, and therefore anybody leasing this land acknowledges that this may terminate immediately because we need to use it again for purpose X.
Right.
So that becomes then a limitation that you accept as part of the RFP.
Okay.
what, that it gets ripped
Brian,
out
anything
from
you want to add to
underneath
that?
Well, there was also comments about
That's not right.
the weed control,
Yeah, the
Yep.
the fencing.
Mhm.
Yep.
Who's
um,
responsible
Who controls,
for which
who's
we can
does
get?
what?
responsible for what?
What are you gonna actually allow up there? I
Yep.
mean,
There was-
like we talked, you can't let someone bring in 100 head of cattle
Right.
and 60 acres. and
Over
expect-
grazing.
But that's limits of grazing, not because it was a poop field.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I
in
mean,
your RFP, you need to know, like, how many acres are there and how many head you
Are
can actually
permissible.
have on there, because if someone comes and says, I'm gonna give you $5,000 or whatever, because I'm gonna bring 100 head, I mean, Brian's right, all that's gonna do is destroy it. It's, will be
Yeah, I
so
think it's-
overgrazed that, I mean,
I think before an RFP goes out, I would like to have eyes on it and discussion on it.
yeah, and then the
Okay.
rates are usually based on, or it used to be when we were ranchers, on the number of head that are going to be actually on the
Yeah.
property, because that will determine the use, you know.
And I put notes on all that.
Okay.
like-
Yeah, you
Yeah.
did, yep.
And to your point, it is city land, and therefore I think it is an appropriate request from the governing body to say, we want to look at it before that RFP goes
Yeah, I
out.
just wanna make sure that
So
the
we will
terms
bring
are
it to
there and there's
council.
Right,
nothing
and
that,
everything is covered.
And
Yeah.
there's lots of other land leases, you know, out there for this purpose. You don't
Yeah.
have to reinvent the wheel.
right,
I mean, it's.
I brought in an example
You.
of ours,
Yeah, exactly,
that,
that's,
you know, explain the sense, explain the weed control.
Right,
Yep.
that's, I remember that, we.
yeah, because again, I saw a lot of those edits, just, I think before it is out there and finalized, like, we should make sure that those terms are in place before we start getting bids for that exact
Yeah,
reason.
and just to, I mean, with
We probably-
everybody's eyes on it, we can determine, see if there's any holes that were missed
Yeah.
or anything.
We probably need something about that there isn't a water source up there,
There's no what?
a water source.
Oh,
I think that was,
I think that
There
was in
is
there.
a water source,
There's a water source up
there's a
there. water
water source, there's a well, but there's no power, so currently a solar pump is what gives
Yeah.
water now.
How
Used
big,
to have a
how,
windmill.
how good a well is it? Any idea?
I think it's a pretty good well. It was a well that was put in to monitor the nitrogen level.
It's only like 12 feet deep.
Yeah,
It
those are
produces
usually
enough
shallow.
water to-
Well, twice it hasn't.
oh, so there's,
It's pretty good, it's about 80%, but But, I mean, you gotta keep it almost a daily eye on it. I mean, depends on the time of year, but it's, being only a 12-foot deep test well, it's not 100% reliable.
So it might be the clause may have to haul water.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that they should
Right.
know.
Water sources provided but not guaranteed,
Yeah,
you know?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that will also affect your rate that you can charge.
Exactly.
yeah, and the fencing, it shouldn't be up to the leasee to build all new fence at their expense, the weeds. It's usually not up to the leasee to manage the weeds on the property, because that can be thousands of dollars. And you come in,
Normally, I
I would disagree with that. Normally, the lessee is the one who handles the weeds, the noxious weeds,
absolutely not.
because they're the ones who are gonna be actually on the property, they're the ones who are actually have cows on the property.
So I think it's a little bit of difference. The difference that I see with it is it's a protection for your property to be the one in charge of weed control and noxious weeds.
Right, I've always thought that's a landowner responsibility.
Nah, I would highly recommend not doing that. Because if the city is recommending, or the city is the one accepting the responsibility for controlling all the noxious weeds on the property, that costs money and time. City's gonna have to send.
Well, I'm more concerned about.
It's already
without
happening, though.
Impacting the cattle that are on it.
Right.
The city's already doing that.
We're talking about if you're spraying for the weeds, what about the cattle that are there?
Usually that's why the lessee is the one
So that
who is
they,
responsible, because they have their cows, they're the
They have the
ones that-
liability.
they wanna control,
They wanna control the weeds, they have to control the weeds, and they have their cows on the land.
If I rent a house
Yeah.
from person X, it's my job to weed it, it's my job to water it, it's my job to,
the city currently pays to have all that sprayed. That land gets sprayed, the sewer ponds get sprayed. The city currently pays to spray all the land that the city owns.
Everything that's under public works control, at least.
but if we lease it out to somebody, is it under public works control anymore?
It's not, and at that point, like, if we're spraying just whenever,
Well, yeah, no, because
You would have to coordinate
public
with the
works still
leasing.
administers it based on if they need it for the sludge.
I mean,
There's that
usually,
part of it.
I
I
mean,
guess maybe I've seen both ways, but,
for agricultural leases, usually the lessee is the one responsible for the weed control. Because they have they're running their cows on the land.
right, but public works is gonna be the one that makes sure they do it.
Yeah. But I don't know why the city should take that liability or take that cost.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we.
I think it was different when public works people were actually leasing it.
Well, they were the
They
ones
kind of
leasing it.
could coordinate
Kind of
it,
a
and those-
gray
that's
area.
kind of a different area,
Yeah,
but
no, and I'm not,
if someone else came in and was just leasing it that we don't know, and they have some prize bull out there and we poison it, or whatever, you know, I mean, it's
No, and that's a very fair
So
concern.
yeah.
That's where the liability is, like, I feel like.
I'm inclined to say that what council is advising matches what if I were leasing a piece of land and I were growing hay, if I were growing, that maintenance of all that is part of what I'm leasing.
So-
If I lease a house, everything there is my responsibility.
So this is where I'm torn on it, is I'm very familiar with residential leases. I am not familiar with agricultural leases. And there's some people in the room that have done it. There's also a lawyer here telling me don't do it. So,
I go with the lawyer.
Well, I think-
what I'm saying
on
is,
the city's end of it, how does the city make sure that whoever's leasing it is spraying it appropriately?
the same way that a
Like we
residential
do
would.
any other landowner and say, hey, you have weeds on your property.
And the city doesn't actually have to do it. I believe it's the
Right.
county that actually
The
goes
county
around
goes around.
and checks for the noxious weeds.
And that's one thing as a landlord that you do for a residential is if you do have to go and spray, mow, do something because the tenant isn't doing it, it's at the expense of the tenant.
Here's the bill.
So again,
My
what-
side of it,
what I was going to say is do we have somebody that we could refer to that's a neutral party that has done
That's
ag
the
leases?
county.
Well, we've got all sorts of ag leases around, that's a dime a dozen,
Right,
but I think,
but I'm
Brian,
saying
you've
specific,
done ag leases and the land, and where you saw it, the landowner was responsible.
landowner takes care of making sure if you're buying grass, you're buying grass.
right,
you're not buying grass with a huge clump of knapweed
Right,
that I want you to take care of now.
right.
But we're not selling grass, we're selling a field.
You're selling
for the
grass.
4 posts.
You're
selling grass.
For the animals.
Yeah.
If it's just a gravel pit, you're not doing you're not doing a pasture lease. You're selling you're selling grass to someone to come in and graze their animals.
So let me rephrase the question. So council's gonna make a recommendation on this. Does council wanna reach out and talk to some different agricultural leases folks? Or do you want staff to come in with examples of A, B, and C?
And I think you've come through and said that you have some of these things.
I brought,
Yeah, you brought
Yeah.
it forward. So, again, I would like to refer to a professional in this field.
Yeah.
So-
I'm getting mixed, I can see, but I also see how the city previously has taken care of it because it was Public Works who was leasing the land prior, right? So that makes sense that,
And again, I can see the
They were the ones
benefit
doing
for, again, there's certain homeowners that they take care of landscaping for this specific reason, where they wanna maintain it and maintain that the weeds won't come up,
right.
because now that's affecting and essentially
Value.
degrading the value of that land.
Council,
So-
council, you've given us your first opinion. Can you go
Yeah.
back and reach out and come back with some examples that help
Yeah,
and weight to your opinion? I don't mean that as
I'm
a
not trying to give
questioning,
you
I
a
just
runaround,
mean,
like, I'm not.
make it defensible for council.
Well, and
So the
also,
reason is, I can say is, when I worked at the DNRC, that's what the state leases are. The state leases, of course, say the lessee has the responsibility for controlling all the noxious weeds on the land. The reason for that is, because governmental entities, we don't send somebody out to check on the land on a regular basis.
right,
We lease out the land, and the lessee takes care of the land, and usually it's for years. Yeah, exactly, usually it just goes on forward. The lessee is the one on the land, the lessee has the one with the cows, running the cows on the land, and for his point,
It sounds, I mean, that sounds completely reasonable.
And-
It
but-
could go either way.
but I mean.
Yeah.
But
for
it
his
needs
point,
to be, to the original point where this started is,
'cause
those terms need to be certain because it needs to be included in the RFC. Because
right.
if I'm Joe Bag of Donuts and I'm gonna put in a lease, I'm gonna factor in what I offer on that based if I'm responsible for controlling weeds or not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I
exactly.
think it's already included, but yeah, we can definitely check on it.
So even in the first draft, it was in there.
Yeah,
But, because what the government's not doing is not selling hay, it's not selling grass. What the government is doing is, this government is saying, you can lease the land, you can use the land, you can lease the
But
land.
you can only use it for grazing.
right, and that's it, there's
specified, right?
restrictions, but,
But yeah, it's
Could-
you, it's you the one
because
who's
we
gonna
limit
graze
it-
on it, you're the one who's gonna
Like, could
grow the
somebody
stuff,
lease it and then use it as a campground?
and then not according to this.
Not if we limit it in the
That's a
RFP.
whole new.
Right.
We change the RFP.
Yeah, if
That's a whole-
we have, we're gonna, if the RFP limits it,
Yeah.
then they can't lease it and turn it into public pickleball courts.
Correct.
Right, but then, it's like you said, you effectively are, you're releasing grass.
Right,
And so then at what point,
Right, if it's only
Okay.
for grazing.
here's the other aspect of that. We actually just got notified that they found, when they were putting in the power line, they found Vetnata up there.
Fun with-
Vetnata is an expensive weed to get rid of,
Oh.
and it runs quick. So now Vetnata's coming off of the city land right next to it, onto there, we find it on there. Hey, it came from our side of the fence, but you need to spray it. It can go both ways, that we expect whoever's leasing it to maintain this, but if something's coming from outside the fence
yeah.
is that their responsibility to spray for Vetnata because we didn't pick it up this year and now that patch is grown?
And
So
so
that's how it
actually,
works for its all
so,
acres.
and I used to have an applicator license. That's not on the state list. And you can't make somebody spray for it. There's 200 different weeds that ranchers spray for, but there's only 15 on the state list that are actually legally noxious. So you can't do anything about that.
I think with the initial lease, you need to have a clean pasture. And it would be the lease, the person who's leasing it, responsibility to maintain it that way and keep it that way.
yeah, 'cause I mean, my neighbor with horses, I get a ton of noxious weeds that come up on my property, and I'm not charging them for the
You
bill.
have to take care of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if, they, and then how many years is this lease gonna be for? Is it gonna be every year? Are we gonna do a 5-year lease? You
With
know,
all the
Personally, I
terms
mean,
included.
personally, if, like, say, if I'm gonna put a bid in, it's not a big deal to me.
Mhm.
I can spray the weeds.
Right.
I mean, you go back and forth on whether you should, but
I think let's, at the next meeting, if council would make sure we have a staff report, a draft lease, and a draft RFC that addresses all those concerns. RFP, sorry.
Thank you.
No worries.
Draft lease, draft RFP.
I mean, I would just want it
Those
to
lately.
be similar to
Comment.
every other ag lease out there. I don't wanna
I mean,
necessarily.
I don't think all
Exactly.
ag leases
Yeah, I don't wanna
are the same.
recreate the wheel, but I
Yeah.
don't.
private ranch
They're
standpoint,
pretty straightforward.
I want it to be similar to all government
yeah.
That's that in mind.
lease.
My kids were singing.
I think that's what it really is government lease things.
Yeah.
So whether it be state or fed or whatever
Yeah.
else, I think there ought to be some examples.
But there is a big difference between a state land lease, because you've had that for like ever.
Oh.
And when you sell your property, it goes to the new owner. It's like, it just goes, so.
You're talking about,
it's
yeah,
different.
stuff built on it.
Isn't there a Carbon County, agricultural office down in Joliet? Forgot what it's called. But
Carbon County office down in Joliet?
The Joliet Carbon County office.
Carbon County Extension Office.
extension, you're getting closer. Anyway, I don't remember the name
I
of
can
it,
pull
but
them a couple of
I have it at the office with the pictures of all the pretty weeds. And we can.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
We can
Okay.
ask-
Well, I mean, I think that we can start just with example lease,
Yeah.
having the example RFP,
Uh-huh.
having,
And a staff report that backs up the logic behind it.
exactly.
Okay.
That would be swell. I think
Perfect.
that is a great, and then before we release any RFP, I think that lease should be set in stone with terms.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay,
So it's not really a request for proposal, because there's not gonna be any options on the proposal.
Well, there is. You can say 5,000, he can say 6,000.
Sure, it's just gonna be filling in the blanks.
Usually it's, yeah,
Right.
just a request for.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I mean, they're
It's a-
gonna have to
it's a
present,
bid.
like, we have
Mhm.
50 head of cows, or we have 10 head of horses, or we have, you know.
So now, to that extent, do we put caps in the RFP, or is that just something we're gonna evaluate? We don't want your 100 head of cows, because that's gonna deplete our resource.
That's a standard calculation based on the acreage in Carbon County. You can
Yeah.
get that from the extension agent.
Yeah, we have that information, but is that a cap? And-
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's fair, because that preserves our resources,
You don't want someone coming
not
in
to
and,
exceed X.
yeah, you don't want someone going up there and putting a feedlot up there,
Whatever the
you know?
extension agent
No,
says,
thank
the AUMs for,
Yeah,
for the dry land pasture in
Okay.
Carbon County, you know.
so
That's
does,
about all you can do with that.
do we feel like we have a good
Jumping off
Yep.
point.
jumping off
Absolutely.
point for next week, and
Yes.
people understand their assignments?
Staff report.
And just be clear, Dennison, can we have that no later than a week from Thursday night? So I'm not sure it'll be in the big packet, but at least we can give it to this group so they can review it over the weekend.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Awesome, so we are now at 4:32. So next on the agenda is planning board update from Sandy.
Not much to report since it's tomorrow night.
Oh.
We did have that really good, forum,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing stood out from the public, kind of what we expected. Everybody wants the downtown to continue to look historical, walkability, and those were the two biggies. It just wasn't, there were lots of ideas, but those were the two big ones. One thing that I was thinking of during those meetings is the planning board is made up of 5, members that live in the city.
Mhm.
Then there's, a Carbon County appointee and a city council appointee. But again, the downtown people generally don't live in the city limits, so they can't vote on any city, anything. And I think that it would be interesting if we changed the makeup of the planning board to always include one downtown business owner on the planning board. Because here we are regulating, signage, you know, what they can do, what colors they can paint their buildings. You know, there's all this regulation for downtown, but then the downtown doesn't have any say,
Well,
Representation.
So, two thoughts. I think that those guidelines and rules are actually set forth by the county because they established us. And secondly, we do have a business person on the planning board.
right now.
But,
I'm just saying that maybe we make it so that it's always a city person, whether they live in the city or not. The one that's on the planning board right now does happen to live in the city, but that's just a happen by.
And I do support the idea of having a business owner on the planning board personally.
yeah.
But that being said, I feel like that's up
Is that
to
going to,
council to make that decision when weighing the options when somebody applies.
Well, and part of that, or
But they won't
or
apply
the
'cause you
mayor,
don't
'cause-
live in the
'cause
city.
the
Oh, you're
county-
saying if it is a county position?
But I think we need, and Dennison would need to look into that to find out. Do we have the ability to change that?
Or do we request the, county to change the makeup? The county did actually say the planning board could be from 7 to 9 people. I remember that from the makeup of the planning board. But, it never did address the idea that it could be a business owner that doesn't necessarily live in the city limits.
Well, and our county person is also a business owner in city limits.
It's not a
Yeah.
downtown business owner.
Yeah, just not a downtown business.
But I wanna make it permanent, I don't wanna just make it, you know, it happens.
it just so happens that.
It so happens, it
Right.
so
And
happens.
it's not as so happens, but your premise starts with the premise that there will never be a landowner who lives in the city or or
No,
a
there
business
may or
owner
may
who lives
not
in the
be.
county.
There may or may not be.
I can look into that. I was gonna have Dennison, but I will follow up with the commissioners on that just to find out.
I mean, I personally think it's a good idea, I don't know how everybody else feels, but.
Oh, I mean, I would love to see it, personally. I think that they have a stake and there's massive stakeholders in our community.
Agreed.
And they
and-
generally don't have a
Again, it's
say.
just figuring out what that process is.
Uh-huh.
Like, if we can make that a possibility, and
So I have an
Like,
action item to find out if it's a
like-
possibility or not.
Yeah, no,
And
no,
return and
no,
report.
no,
Yeah,
no, no.
100%. Oh, no, they're out of town, no.
Okay.
Okay, all right, cool.
Anyway, that was one of the things that, to me, came out of that, downtown plan.
Your next meeting starts in 7 minutes.
Yep, so, that being said, we do have standing topics for future discussion, but it sounds like some of our current topics still have plenty of discussion, so.
Very much so.
Cool, and we had a very quick discussion prior to the meeting about land that is, north of town on the east side, just past Beartooth Electric.
Right,
And I understand that you worked with Marcella today to determine whether or
We're-
not it's in the city limits
So according to the city map that we got from the county,
from the
it
county.
is.
Okay.
However, there's still some additional homework that needs to be done. I've lost staff for a second on it. So the answer is yes, but there's some additional homework we're looking at. It has to do with zoning and if they want to build on it. Because what the county said today was, yes, except there are exceptions, about like 90% of the properties in the county, 10% is in the city. Does the city have any ability and influence on, if I don't build in that 10-foot strip, do we have a say or not? So
Then
there's-
then it goes on
Huh.
to say that the urban renewal district is
So-
talking about including that in
yeah,
their.
and it is right now inside of it. So the question that came up specifically, but like I said, there's, the other part is it part of city limits? Right now, it appears that it is. However, there's a judge decree that annexed it and made it part of the adjoining property. The decree did not address, and therefore the whole thing is in the city, or therefore the whole thing is in the county. If there is such a, and there's not a downside to being in the urban renewal district, other than taxable value, I guess, coming into the city. But I would put forth that if it is determined that that is not in the city, which would require adopting a new boundary, then to me, there's not a thought process involved, is do we also take them out of the urban renewal district?
Right.
But the question is it part of the city first, and where's
Yeah.
the implication?
Or do we want to annex it into the?
Well, there's another part,
That development
but,
in-
and I would argue that whole piece of property is one of the more susceptible pieces to being annexed. But unlike the other two or three that we've talked about, they haven't already agreed to it as such.
No.
Yeah.
It would be the point that they came and said, hey, we want city services, we want sewer,
Right,
we want
water,
water, then that would be a condition
They have to
at
be
that point.
connected.
But my gut read at this point is they don't have an interest, that they don't have an interest in becoming, based on what I heard in the conversation, their concern was they don't want the city to tell them what they can and can't do, which sounds to me like they want to be in the county, not in the
Yep.
But it is
Yeah.
our community entrance. It's our community entrance.
But
So-
it's
You-
also
but-
So we
not
should be-
when it's not
So we should
city
be a
land.
little concerned with what they do with it.
Sure, we can be concerned about it, but I mean, it's the same way that,
My,
Since
the
the
lot next to me
Yeah.
is in my view shed, my neighbor's gonna come in and build. Okay, as long as he builds within the rules, I don't have a say.
And what if that ends up being a stripper joint?
fabulous.
If that is allowed within the county,
Yeah,
we can comment and that's it.
It's
Yeah.
not, don't worry about it.
It's not,
You're not,
You check.
you already tried? You already tried?
Brian was really concerned because he lost his second job income when they found that out.
so yeah, again, at the end of the day, if it's not city land, we can't tell them what to do. And even if it is community entrance, that's all well and good, we want it to look lovely, but if we don't have the ability to tell them, then we don't have the ability to tell
County
them.
is adjacent to
Yeah.
our community entrance.
Which, according to the planning board in that 1 mile, surrounding the city limits, if the county gets a request for building
A
there,
subdivision within a mile of the city
within the mile of the city, they do have to come to us for our opinion.
for input,
Yeah.
comment, that's it.
that's all.
That's it, no control.
All right, well,
Okay.
good meeting, team. I think we're gonna have to wrap that up, because we have another one starting in a couple minutes.
4 minutes,
So,
perfect, awesome.
give
I got reprimanded
Oh.
last
adjourn,
week.
and I heard.
Did you hear about that?
Yep.
So